Hey guys, and welcome back to the channel. On today's tutorial I'll be sharing with you how to draft and sew this simple socks with a puffy sleeve. So if it's your first time in my channel, please hit on the subscribe button, and if you're a returning subscriber, thank you for supporting my channel. So let's start. So first, I've marked out my basic measurements, which is my shoulder to bust, under bust, shoulder to waistline, and my top length. Or you can call it my bust length, which is 4 inches after my waistline, but I ended up using about 3 inches or 3.5 inches. So let's start. So the first thing I want to do is to mark my shoulder divided by 2, and because you're attaching sleeve, I'm going to add ½ inch, which is 14 divided by 2. I have 7 plus half, that is 7.5, and I'll go down by 1 inch, and at that point I'm going to draw my shoulder slope or shoulder slant. Next step I'm going to take is to find my chest line, and to do that is your bust divided by 6 plus 1.5 inches. I will mark and make sure what I have at the shoulder is what I have on that chest line. I'll draw a straight line connecting, and I'll place my ruler and draw or mark out my chest line. So my line is not so straight, I'll just clean it up. So the next step I'll take is to place my tape, find the middle of my armhole, and I'll go in by ½ inch. And from that point I'm going to place my tape, and I'll go ahead to find my bust circumference divided by 4. I'll mark, place my French curve at this point and take it down, and I will go ahead and take it up to the upper part. So I'll go ahead to outline my pattern so that it will be more visible. So I'll be outlining the shoulder and the armhole area. So next you'll be placing your tape on the shoulder part, and I will just be drawing out a neckline which I will use as a guide. So I'm just using the standard 3 by 3 inches neckline. So I won't be working with this, it's just to serve as a guide for the shoulder part. So I'll also go ahead and outline that. Next I'll be marking my nipple to nipple divided by 2. So you're going to place your tape, measure your nipple to nipple, and then divide it by 2. Mine is 7 inches divided by 2. I have 3.5 inches, and I'll be marking it on my pattern paper. After that, I'm just going to rule a straight line to connect all the marks that I have made. Now I'll be marking my dart intake for this. So for this particular pattern, I'll just be making use of ½ inch. So you can go ahead and use 1 inch on your dart intake, but I'm making use of ½ inch. So if you're wondering why I'm doing this, is because the top does not have much contour. So I want to make use of a normal dart intake. So after marking this, I'll just go ahead and I will connect the lines back. I'll connect from the under bust down to the waist, and from the waist down to the bust length. So now I'll be introducing my French curve to draw my curve. From the bust line, I'll connect down to the under bust, and from my under bust, from my bust, I'll still connect to my under bust at the other side. So if you notice, my pattern at the cup side is not too curvy. So why I did this is that so that when I'm sewing, that part won't be too curvy, especially if you're going to insert a boning to this dress. So from my chest line, I'm going to place my tape, and I will go up by 2 inches. So you can go ahead and go up by 1.5 inches. So from that point, I'm just going to draw a straight line at this point, just to indicate where the neckline of the dress will start. So next I'm going to place my ruler and extend it upwards. So after this, I'm going to mark ½ inch at both sides, just like I did at the under bust. So the reason why I'm doing this is that so that I won't have so much curve to deal with at this part, so that it will be easier for me to join in case I'm going to add a boning. But you can still go ahead and use your normal dart intake. So I'll just go ahead and I will outline that part so that it's going to be very visible. So I'll place my tape at the upper part, and I'll go ahead and divide what I have remaining into 2. So you can decide to just mark 2.5 inches from the neckline, or just divide what you have at the shoulder. And going down to this part, I will be marking 2 inches. So I'm just going to go ahead and place my tape and mark. So after that, I'll connect from the shoulder line down to the lower part. So after doing that, I'll just go ahead and outline that part and then draw a straight line connecting to the neckline on top. So this is the neckline of my top, and it looks like a Queen Anne neckline also. So next step I'll take is, remember I took away half inch on both sides at this part, so I'm just going to replace it. So at the outer part, I'll just go ahead and mark about 1 inch at that side. So what I'll do is just to use my pencil or marker and blend it in a bit. So I'll just go ahead and redraw my armhole just this way. So after that, the next thing I'm going to do is to mark my bust circumference divided by 4, mark that dart intake again, replace it, and mark my 1.5 inch sewing allowance. Go down to my bust, whatever I have at my chest line, I'll replace it to my bust. I'll replace it at my bust line. At my under bust, I'll mark my under bust circumference divided by 4. Go ahead and measure the dart intake, and I'll mark my 1.5 inch sewing allowance. I'll repeat the same thing at my waistline, mark my waist circumference divided by 4, measure the dart intake I have, and mark my 1.5 inch sewing allowance. So whatever I have at my waistline, that is what I will repeat at my basque or top length. Why is that the top, at that part of the top, is not going to reach the hip line. So next, I'm going to connect from my bust to my under bust, and from my under bust down to my waist length, and you can go ahead and just connect your basque length also, but it might not be necessary because we are going to be connecting the dress at the lower part from the waistline. So to draw my basque, what I'm going to do is that 1.5 inches I marked at my sewing allowance. From that point, I'm going to place my French curve, and I'm going to connect to the lower part. So I used about 3.5 inches. 4 inches is also okay. And if you notice, the basque is a bit roundish. So looking at the dress, you notice that there are more than one style lines or that on it. So right now we are going to be doing that on the dress. So I'll measure what I have at my under bust at this part, and I will divide it into 2. So you can also use what you have at your waistline, especially if your waistline is bigger than your under bust. But my waistline and my under bust is the same thing. So I'm just going to use I'm going to use my waistline. So I'm going to place my ruler and I'm going to connect it to the upper part. And if you notice, one of the darts is slightly going towards the armhole area, and I'll just go ahead and I will run or draw a straight line at that point. So after drawing that, I'm just going to blend this part a bit so that when I'm joining it is going to actually meet. Also in front we have a dart intake, so I'll be dividing what I have here into 2. So I'm going to repeat the same process also at the lower part, and I'll just go ahead to draw a straight line from the upper part down to the lower part. So if you don't want to create style lines only, you can go ahead and impute your darts, and so in case you don't want to make use of style lines, you can go ahead to insert that at this point. So I'll just go ahead and label as A, B, C, and D. So my front pattern is in 4 pieces. So the next step I'll take right now is to go ahead to cut. So before I cut out, there's one more step that is very important. I'm just going to go ahead and blend the lower part. So I'll go ahead and blend in this part to make sure it's going to meet the other part. So this is very important. So right now you know that when you're cutting your pattern, you're going to start at the second line. So I'll just go ahead and cut out my front pattern. So please, at this point, if you find this tutorial very interesting and educative, please don't forget to hit on the subscribe button, and don't forget to give this video a thumbs up and leave your comment at the comment section. So after cutting out, I have 4 pieces for my front pattern, and we'll be cutting the back pattern. For my back pattern, we are going to keep it simple, and I've gone ahead to draw out my zip, my basic neckline, my armhole, and I marked my shoulder to bust, shoulder to chest line, and shoulder to waistline. So after that, I'll just place my tape, and I'll also include my shoulder to under bust. So you can make use of your shoulder to under bust, or you can just leave it. So next I'll be marking my dart intake. I'll place my tape and mark my shoulder to bust plus 1 inch which is 10 inches, and from there I'm going to be marking my dart intake, and all the dart intake for the back is starting from the zipper allowance. So I'll mark my nipple to nipple divided by 2, and I'll mark it at my waistline. After marking that, I'll just place my ruler and I'm going to connect a straight line at that point. So you can as well take it up to your chest line, which you'll be serving as a guide later. So for this, I'll just go ahead and mark ½ inch at both sides, and I will stop my dart intake at this point, which is my shoulder to bust plus 1 inch, and I will draw a line connecting to that point. And after drawing this is the dart intake for the back. So what I'll do next is to go ahead and mark that same 2 inches from my chest line at the upper part. So why I'm doing this is so that my neckline won't be too low at the back, but if you want yours to be very low at the back, you can go ahead and do that. So I'm just using that 2 inches above my chest line, and I will draw a line. So I'll go ahead, place my tape, divide what I have at the shoulder just like I did for that front part, and I will go ahead to connect it. And before I do that, I'll measure the same 2 inches I marked at the neckline, and I'm going to connect from my shoulder down to my neckline. After connecting that, I'll just go ahead to use my marker to outline my neckline. Now the next thing you do is to place your tape starting from your zipper line, and you're going to mark your bust circumference divided by 4, add my sewing allowance. At the under bust, I'll mark my under bust circumference divided by 4. I'll measure the dart intake, mark my 1.5 inch sewing allowance, and over to the waistline I'm going to mark my waist circumference divided by 4 and measure the dart intake I have here, replace it, and I'm going to mark my sewing allowance. So after doing this, all you have to do is connect what you have from the bust down to the chest line, and then you're going to take it from the bust down to the under bust, and from the under bust down to the waistline. So my back pattern is ready, and the next step is just to go ahead and I will outline all the marks to make it more visible. I'll go ahead to also label it, and the next thing is to get rid of that bulginess at the back of the dress. So I'll just go ahead and mark ½ inch at this point, and I'm going to take it to the upper part. So for my zipper allowance, I used 1 inch. So while I'm cutting, I'm just going to add ½ inch for turn up. But if you're using 2 inches at your zipper allowance, you won't be adding any turn up at that point. So in our next video, we'll be stitching up this pattern. So after this, I'll just go ahead and I will cut out my back pattern, and with this my back pattern is ready. So after cutting out, I'm just going to go ahead and blend in my dart. That is if you don't like sewing dart on your dress before cutting out your pattern. So with this, we have come to the end of today's tutorial. So if you haven't yet subscribed, please hit on the subscribe button, and don't forget to give this video a thumbs up and leave your comment at the comment section. See you in our next video. Thanks.